If you like games because you get your own thing, you get to do something that nobody else can do, you might like variable player powers. That's what I like. That was my number one board game mechanism of all time. I just finished a series ranking all of the different mechanics in board games, and this is one of my favorite because it makes me feel special. Okay, I want to feel special when I play games. It's not enough to be having a fun time with friends. I need to feel special. But it's true, having something that is entirely your own in a game is really, really fun. It gives you something to focus on. It gives you a special power or an ability that can help guide the gaming, and it is probably one of the most popular board game mechanics out there, with 14,954 games on Board Game Geek being registered as having the variable player power mechanic. And that doesn't even count the ones that don't have that. Attack on Titan, the deck builder, you have your own special player power to start, and that isn't even listed on there. So I know that there are quite a few that aren't even listed because it's up to the publisher to list these sorts of things, or whoever manages the Board Game Geek listing. Doesn't matter. Basically, there's a lot of games out there that give you this unique thing, that give you this special ability. And so I wanted to put together a list of my top 10 games that give me that feeling, that make me feel that I have something completely unique that nobody else has around the table, and makes me feel excited to return to the game because then I can experience that thing that my friend had over there and I didn't get to try out on that particular run. I think variable player powers add so much to replayability, and they're just friggin' fun to play with. So these are the top 10 games that include variable player power. Now, a caveat with this list is that I'm trying to focus on specifically things that you either start with as a variable player power and don't necessarily build up over the course of the game. There are a lot of dungeon crawlers, let's say, where you get items and get special items that only you have. And in a sense, that's a variable player power because only you have that thing. But that's not what I'm trying to focus on, because those sorts of experiences are a bit inconsistent. I'm trying to focus on the games that have that baked in from the get-go, and you start your journey or you start your game with a special thing. As I check my list to make sure that I'm correct. The other caveat is that 14,954, or whatever it is. Yeah, I got it right. That number isn't necessarily representative of the variable player power experience. And that's again why I wanted to put this list forward. There are games on there that are listed as variable player powers, which I don't think have them. Chronicles of Crime is listed as having the variable player powers because you can visit your various housemates or friends or family members or people in the police department, depending upon what iteration you're playing, and they can do different things for you. I don't consider that to be variable player powers. Tiny Towns is listed as having variable player powers, which I also believe is an incorrect listing. You get these two buildings at the beginning of the game. You can keep one, and only you can build that special building once throughout the game. And it gives you a unique power sometimes. Those aren't the sort of games that I am looking for. They won't be on this list. And I think that's also mindful if you are searching for games that have variable player powers, is really defining what about it makes you excited. For me, it's that it impacts the game in a significant manner. And so that's what this list is going to be. It's going to be games that the variable nature of the player powers take front and center in the experience. If there are other mechanics that feel more prevalent to me throughout the game, or significantly more prevalent, I'm not going to include them on the list. I'm only including games where the variable players seem to really matter, and it's not like a one-time thing. I almost broke that rule on this list by putting Dominant Species Marine. I wanted to put Dominant Species Marine on the list. It's not. As a cheeky little addition, because in Dominant Species Marine, you are evolving your species as the game goes on. But you're doing that through these little one-time use evolution cards, and you really only start with one little differentiation between the characters. You start with being able to thrive in a different area. There are different types of areas on the board, and certain creatures thrive better in those areas than others. And you get one little special trait card that you can choose. So you can make yourself be the flying crabs or the ram feeder crabs, and they give you this additional thing. And I wanted to put that on the list. Again, it's not. Because the reason I want to keep coming back to dominant species is in part because I don't feel you get enough of those traits to begin with. I don't feel you get enough of those traits to begin with to make a significant impact upon the game. And so that's why I do kind of associate it with variable player powers, because I want to try all of them and see the different combinations. But what really matters is the worker placement aspect and the area control aspect of the game. And your people feel kind of the same. So luckily I played that just recently and realized the error of my ways, me trying to be clever and include some that other people may not think to put on the list. Well, there's a reason, because I don't think that one applies. So let's get into the list, starting with number 10, a game where your player powers are constantly changing throughout the game, and it's baked into the game as to when you want to give up one variable player power and move on to the next species. This is, of course, Smallworld. Smallworld has been around for a long time. You're going to get a little race of people. You'll be the Amazons, the skeletons, the barbarians, whatever. And then each game, you also have a randomized secondary ability with those characters. And once you feel like you've conquered the map enough, you can turn your race into decline, and you can choose another set of character and secondary abilities and bring them onto your side. And I go back and forth in terms of my love for Smallworld or not. That's why it's kind of lower on the list. The list is comprised of both how much do these play a part in the game and the gameplay itself. I tried to balance the two, leaning more towards how much do variable player powers impact the game itself. And I think Smallworld is a great example of the variability that's baked into the name that these variable player powers can provide. Smallworld is known as a great intro to area control as well, if you're taking over various territories, trying to be on the map. If you've liked Risk growing up, or like Risk now, you might like Smallworld as well. But what draws me back to Smallworld is not the area control, it's the different abilities and trying to pick the best ability for the people who I'm facing against and for the current breakdown of the map. What is going to net me the most points? And that is entirely determined by how well those two, the character powers and the secondary powers, interact with each other and provide these really potentially game-breaking combos. So that's why I wanted to include it on the list. Even though it's a game that has left my collection, it is something that I will happily play and enjoy. And I think that is directly because of the variable player powers. Now, moving on to number 9, this is a game that has also left my personal collection. It's living with my former friend and now nemesis, Josh, because he thought it looked cool. And I think the concept of this game looks really cool. In practice, it doesn't hit that well with me, but I also know a lot of people who really enjoy this game. So that's why I wanted to put it on this list, because it is the player powers that make me want to give it another shot again and again and again, and that game is Cosmic Encounter. Cosmic Encounter is often described as you're going to learn the basic rules of the game, and then you're going to get a character which will absolutely break all of those rules of the game. And it's up to how the players interact with those different characters that really forms the basis of the game. You'll get characters that seem so overpowered, and if people don't link up and join forces to fight them off, you won't be able to beat them. You get characters that do such silly things or add cards to the game where in previous editions, and this is, again, I always reference this when talking about this game because this is what I like about the game, that just let you cheat. They let you literally break the rules and steal cards from the discard pile, and if nobody catches you, then you get to keep those cards. It's a very simple game that doesn't really give you choices. It will determine who around the table you're going to attack. You can then say, hey, do you want to ally with me or ally with the person who I'm attacking? Then you each play one card and you see whose force is the strongest when you have +0 to +40 modifiers. It's a game that I think is very silly when you're trying to play it strategically because it just seems obvious. But if you're playing it to just have fun and you have a lot of wild cards around the table who will just do the weird thing rather than the strategically sound thing, I think it can be a good time. That's again why this one's low on the list as well, because I'm not as huge a fan of the gameplay, but I recognize that there are a lot of people out there who enjoy this game. And I think the reason I am willing to continue to try it with various people is because of the player powers. You get a stack of like 40 different alien races, and they all do something very different. And I think your success in the game and your success in the enjoyment of the game, which is more important, in my opinion, is sort of centered around those character powers and if they're interesting or not. I think I've even seen house rules or some sort of variant where you get two. You get one that's face up and one that's face down that you can then flip over and activate at any time. Or you can start by not showing your character power and then reveal it, and then you start to enact it. I don't like that talking about it like this in this frame makes me want to play it again, because I don't really enjoy it, but I have enjoyed it more as I've played it with less strategic intensity and more just, hey, let's just be stupid and silly around the table. Now, moving along to number 8, this one is also lower on the list, not because it has less emphasis on variable player powers. I think the whole draw to this game might be that every character you play is its own complete set of different powers. But again, I don't think it's the characters that necessarily pull me into this one. They do. Because I made a whole video ranking the characters and which ones I find more fun. But it's the system itself that I really enjoy as well. So that's why it's lower, because I can't divest the differences of characters with the enjoyment of the system and my own personal enjoyment. But a game that is just, you pick a character, I pick a character, we roll some dice, is Dice Throne. Dice Throne is just a really fun game. I have a full review of it, and then I have a video ranking all the characters that I've played, which ones are my personal favorites. And I think the fact that I do have that video is why it is eligible for this list. The premise is simple. It's Battle Yahtzee. You're going to roll dice, re-roll them up to 3 times, and make sets of symbols which will deal a certain amount of damage and do something different to the opponent. Every character will have their own special tokens that you can apply to the other opponent, and you're going to try to punch them more in the face before they punch you in the face. Or you're going to try to just roll Yahtzee 5 6s every time and just deal your ultimate ability and smash everybody out of the water. Every character is unique. Every character is built differently. When we were talking over on the Board Game Mechanics ranking list, somebody said, what would be a game that just has variable player powers? And they suggested Unmatched as an option. And I said, yeah, that would be a good option, or Dice Throne would be my other pick for just variable player powers, because every character is different. You can mix and match sets. You can just get a 2-pack of characters or a 4-pack of characters, because all that it's going to be is you're going to take one character and you're going to face off against the other character and see how well your character can do against the other person. So if you like that concept, if you like the concept of learning your own little puzzle while interacting and being combative with somebody else, then I would suggest to check out Dice Throne. Now, number 7 on this list is Burncycle by Chip Theory Games. I don't know why I gave away the ghost. I usually draw this out, but hey, you can see the names and the timestamps anyway, and you've probably already scrolled through to see what's number 1. Let me know if that's true. That's kind of what I do when I'm watching. I just scroll ahead, I think. I don't ever wait for the mystery. I just look at the timestamps. Burncycle is a game that I also have a review on this channel. It is a heist. You are little robots breaking into a larger corporation trying to get some data, very important data, that will help you be sentient robots and break from the hold of these evil corporations. So you'll be going throughout these levels, these pre-made scenarios, and running around the board trying to hack into different computers and complete different objectives. But each robot has its own custom abilities, both if you're playing it as the character or the extra unit that everybody on your team can control, which gives you all access to their general ability. I contemplated putting Too Many Bones on this list as well, also by Chip Theory Games, but the thing with Too Many Bones is that it's more about the tech tree. I think Too Many Bones might fall into a tech tree list, whereas Burncycle falls into this variable player powers list, because you start out with your ability. And then everybody has the chance to upgrade their character as you go through the game, but you're mostly upgrading them in a similar fashion or unlocking unique abilities that only pertain to you. And the reason I want to return to burncycle is because I think the characters are cool. I think the system is fun and going through the levels are fun, but what really brings me back are the difference in the characters. They feel significantly different in that you could approach the same scenario in a completely different way, how you stealth your way through the map and navigate it, and that's exciting. That is the reason why I like variable player powers, because it adds this fresh take to an existing game, and I think burncycle does that really well in terms of wanting to draw you back in through this specific thing. The characters are fun. They all have fun special abilities, but I guess it's a bit lower on the list because you could ignore those and just upgrade them in the standard way. But still, thinking about the characters that I haven't yet tried in burncycle makes me want to get it off the shelf. And I think that's the main reason why it got onto this list. Moving along to number 6. Again, I really enjoy this game upcoming. I probably enjoy this game more than quite a few that are ahead of it, but I enjoy it for a lot of different reasons. One of these is the variable player powers, but it has a lot of other great things working for it. That doesn't matter. The thing that I usually pitch for this game is how out there the player powers are. It's this big epic war game, and that is Dune. Just regular Dune. It's gonna take you 6 hours, Dune, but it is so fun. And my pitch is usually this: the player powers are so different and give everybody such a different aspect of looking at the game. You have the House Atreides, who literally get to look at every single card and write them down as players are playing them, so they know where all the information is in the game and they can use that information as a bartering point. You have the Emperor, which is anytime somebody spends money, it goes to the Emperor. The same with the Spicing Guild. Anytime somebody spends spice, it goes to the Spicing Guild. But my personal favorite player power is the Bene Gesserit, who at the beginning of the game get to write down a prediction. They say they can predict who is going to win the game and on what turn. There's a maximum of 10 turns. And if they predict it correctly, that person doesn't win the game. The Bene Gesserit win the game. I just think that is so funny, and that's what I usually use to hook people into the concept of Dune. I don't talk about the gameplay when I'm trying to bring people in. I talk about the variable player powers and try to get people excited in that way, and excited to sit down for the 6-hour journey or more that this game might take. Just so much fun. Now, number 5, this probably might be my most controversial pick. Some people may not agree with me, but I find these powers to be fairly significant throughout the game. That is the worker placement game where you're building a library ex Libris. All you're doing is you're organizing your shelves. You're getting a bunch of cards that have book titles on them and you're placing them in your own little tableau. But once you place them on the shelves, you can't move them, or you can only move them in specific ways. But each person has 2 regular workers and they have 1 special worker. 1/3 of all your workers is this special worker, and it gives you this special power when you can use it. Sometimes you can place it in a spot and nobody else can go there. Sometimes it doesn't actually have an ability when you place it somewhere, but it allows you to, every time you get a card, tuck extra cards under it for points. There are something like 13 to 14, I want to say, different characters, all with their own different character meeple. And it adds a lot of fun factor to the game. The little meeple is fun to put out and say, that's my personal assistant. And to me, all of these powers feel really significant. I've played against some where I think, that's the best power, it's game breaking, how could I ever win? And then I play as that character and think, oh, I see, I'm just bad at this game. But any game that gives you that feeling of, that character seems really good, or that character feels overpowered, I like, because it's showing the importance of that thing. And I like Ex Libris a lot. I think it's an underrated worker placement. I think the art design is sometimes really bad because they have white text and nobody can read what the spots do, especially when you have variable spots where they can go to. Each game is different. The locations change. It's pretty stupid how that was designed, but the game itself is pretty fun and I like the powers a lot. Now, moving along to number 4, this is a game that I talk about a lot. It's one of my favorites. I also have a review of it on my channel. And again, the reason it isn't taking top spot is because there are other aspects that I enjoy equal to the variable player powers, but the powers themselves are so cool. The clan abilities for this game are so cool, and that is Rising Sun. I love Rising Sun. It's such a fun game, but every clan's power feels game-breaking. It really does. You have the Dragonfly clan, who don't have to walk, they can fly. They can move anywhere they want on the board. For the entire game, they have that mobility. You have the Turtle clan, which anytime you create a stronghold, which helps get you more troops onto the board, that stronghold goes on the back of a turtle. And this can walk around to different locations, spawning people at those different locations, and also participating in the battles in a way that it can never be killed because it's a giant turtle holding a giant house on it. You have the Koi clan, who want lots of money because when they go to battle, all of their leftover coins count as mercenaries that they can then hire and bring in as extra strength. You have the Lotus clan, always get to do whatever they want on their turn. So you're drawing 4 options on your turn of things that you can do. The Lotus gets to put one of those face down and say, yeah, that's this option. We're going to recruit and bring people onto the board. And they also then get to bury something that nobody else will get to pick from later on, which is almost as significant. I think I did a video on this, ranking the clans, and if I haven't, I should. I better go back and look at that. I'm fairly certain I did that, though. Maybe I didn't. That's a good video. I'll go double check. But all the clans are so fun to play and feel significantly different that once you've played one, you're thinking, okay, next time I want to try the Bonsai clan. Next time I want to try the Fox clan and see how that plays. And I think that's really important, especially in longer games as well, to have that hook of drawing people back in. But a huge part of why I like Rising Sun is tied into these special clan abilities and them feeling so important and fun and interesting to navigate. So that's why it's my number 4. Now, number 3, hitting the podium, we have Spirit Island. In Spirit Island, you are fighting off the invaders. You are the spirits of an island. You are trying to protect the inhabitants and the island itself from colonizers. A very noble goal. But these spirits themselves are all so different. And they're different in a few ways. Each spirit gets to start with a set of cards that represent their abilities. These are the special abilities that they can do. This isn't necessarily why this is on my list. I think, especially because as the game goes on, you can add different abilities to your spirit and make them do different things. The reason it is on my list is because every spirit has a different way of developing itself as well. You have 3 options or 2 options of what you can usually do on your turn. You can put a presence out in a territory of the land, and depending upon the number of presences that you have there, you can do additional things or you have more strength. And then each time you put something out, you also unlock ways to get more cards back into your hand and more energy to spend on cards. And the way each spirit does this is also different. So it's not just about the separate powers, it's more about how the spirit develops its presence across the land that feels so significant. One of the biggest examples I can give of this in the base game, you can basically play as the ocean. So you cannot have presence on the board that's not close to the ocean shore. But when you're next to the ocean, while you're bringing your waves in and you're destroying cities of the foolish colonizers who are trying to blight your land with their stupid little buildings. It's the spirits that make me want to come back to that game. It's how they play, it's how they all feel different, and how you feel really powerful and cool using each one of their abilities. It's not necessarily the gameplay itself of Spirit Island that pulls me in. It is specifically the spirits and what I get to do as a player that I think is really fun, and that's why it is so far up on this list, because I feel they play such a huge factor in the game. Number 2 is a game that I do not yet own, but I'm gonna go out and buy it because it's number 1 on my wish list, and I just think it's so fun, and I can't stop thinking about all the variable player powers that I haven't tried. It's Santorini. Santorini could be a very simple, boring game. It's an abstract puzzle. You're moving somebody one space and you're building a section of a tower, and the goal of the game is to get your person to the top of any tower before somebody else. But you can also put caps on the towers to make sure that nobody can go there. And you can also build around people so that they are stuck in a corner of the map. It's a really fun, tactical 1 versus 1, best at 1 versus 1 abstract puzzle that is elevated to such an extent because every time you play, you get a different power. You can force people to move up to the next level if they're next to a building. You can have the ability to move into someone's space and kick them off a building and push them down to the ground. You can have the ability to both run around and build at the same time, when usually it's either build or move someone. They're broken down in the rulebook from simple to more complicated, but you get something like 40 of them. It's so simple. It's just a stack of cards and you deal out a random card to someone and that's how you play. But because of that, because of those combinations, it shifts the space, it shifts the playing space in such a way that it feels different and fresh every time you do play it. Or at least that's been my experience with it, not currently owning it, but wanting to purchase it because of this. I remember being blown away by how fun the abilities were and how much it changed such a light, abstract game into something I think pretty special. So number 2 is Santorini, which brings us to our number 1 game with variable player powers. This is a game where it is entirely because of the powers that I enjoy it to the extent that I do. This is a dungeon crawler. It's not Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven could fall into this category, right? That could be an honorable mention. We're going off on a slight tangent because every character has their own set of cards, but for me, it's how you use the cards and it's how you maneuver yourself around the board that makes the difference, and it's not the character classes themselves that make me excited to play Gloomhaven. It's for other reasons. It is the character classes themselves that make me want to get this back to the table again and again. They all feel so powerful and different and fun. You can level up your skills in a different way, but you start out with these base skills. You start out with these skills which gives each player basically their own mini game to play while they're involved in the main game. But this mini game is so important to your success and also makes you feel really powerful by the end of the scenario. I'll grab it off the shelf. Ugh. This is Massive Darkness 2. This is a game where I would encourage people to purchase the expansions because the expansions, or some of them, are just extra character classes. And the extra character classes are so fun. I made a storage solution for this with the 10 character classes that I had, and I don't have the 11th, the Druid, and it is only because I don't have the space for it in this one box, and I spent so long creating the storage solution to incorporate everything else that I'm not going to go out and immediately purchase the Druid class, even having not yet played every single class in here. I've seen every single class because other friends have played them, but I just haven't had the chance to play a few of them yet. But I want to keep returning to this game because the character classes feel so fresh. I love the little mini games that happen. Even the Barbarian, who I didn't expect would be fun. I mean, it's the Barbarian, you're just taking wounds for power, right? But there is a way to it. The way you increase your rage and you use your rage and you take wounds to do other things was just a blast. The wizard is dealing with this own circular amulet of power, and you can only activate things when you're at that point in the amulet. The rogue has a little bag of tokens that they pull out, and they can use 3 to do special abilities for each one of their actions. Everything feels so fun and different, and yet it doesn't ever detract from that main scenario. It only enhances it. To me, this amplifies the possibilities for fun variable player powers. This has such an emphasis on the different classes, even more so than the enemies. It is your actual hero powers versus the abilities of the enemies that feel a lot more interesting. Honestly, the enemies, I have a lot of different enemies in here and a lot of different cards representing even miniatures that I don't have. And they all kind of feel the same. They have small little attacks, but they don't really matter. Your character classes here matter in terms of how the scenario is going to turn out and how you are going to feel. And actually feeling like that character, I think, also comes to pass. So Massive Darkness 2 is my number 1 game for variable player powers. But anything on this list, I would play any day of the week. I think they're all, well, no, I wouldn't. Not Cosmic Encounter. But any one of these games I would play because of the variable player powers. And any one of these games, I think, if you enjoy variable player powers, are worth checking out. If you haven't, because I feel they play such a significant impact on the game itself. And that was a bit of what the ranking and defining the board game mechanics was all about. It's about isolating what you enjoy and then seeking more of that thing. And so in that regard, that's why I wanted to do this video, to emphasize a little bit more about why I enjoy variable player powers, and if you like those too, maybe where you might find them. So drop in the comments below for me, not for anybody else, but I guess everybody else, you can read the comments too. But for me, what are great games where you think variable player powers are at the forefront? They're the thing that gets you to pull the game out. They are the thing that makes you excited to play the game. I'm sure Merchant's Cove will be on there. I just haven't played it, but I know that one is everybody's own little mini game as well. Yeah, let me know what you like. Let me know what you would put as your list or your top 3. I'm curious. If I haven't played them, well then, hey, I'm gonna be on the lookout for them for sure. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all being here. I didn't say it at the beginning, but my name's Chris George, and well, unfortunately I don't have a catchphrase, so. I guess it just means I have a variable catchphrase, right? I can finish every video differently. Yeah, the freedom there is pretty good.